Hello and welcome to Tableau training on dashboards. My name is Michelle and I'm with the Simplilearn team. Today we will be building dashboards from start to finish. First about world population, then health. Next we'll build a dashboard about economy, and finally we'll build a dashboard about business ease. I would recommend getting access to the dataset before you start this tutorial so you can build along with me. If you would like access to this dataset, please comment below and we'll get you access. So first we're going to build a dashboard that revolves around population. So we're going to build a map based on country. So I'm going to double click on country and it's going to map out all of the countries. And then on our marks I'm going to change it to map. So it's a filled in map. And we want this to be colored by population total. And we can see who contributes the most to population. We're going to label it with population as well, but you can see that it's labeling it the total population, and what we want to label it is how much it contributes to population by percentage. So let's add a table calculation, and we're going to have it do percent of total based on country. Okay, so now we can see which countries contribute what percent. Let's also bring the country name onto the label. And let's put it on top. So country names on top. Now it's getting a little bit crowded in here, so we're going to unclick Show Marks Label, and we're just going to show the ones that we want to see specifically. So we can right click on China here, hover on Mark Label, and click Always Show. And on India, since these are our two biggest contributors, we can see that this one's a little bit darker than the others in that area. And here. And that's just a manual way to choose which ones have indicators and labels and which ones do not. And we're going to put a note here. So we're going to annotate an area that explains that China and India contribute the most to world population. Just calling out this section of the visualization. And let's name this sheet. So here we have our visualization, and when you hover you can see both the total population and its percent contribution and the country name. Our next visualization for this dashboard is going to be population over time. So let's bring on our time element. But one trick for bringing on a time element, if we just drag it on, so year with the calendar mark here, if we just drag it on, it'll default to a discrete version. So let's take it back off. And then we could edit it there. But one thing you could do is if you, on a Windows machine, if you right click on it and drag it on, then it will pop up with a dialog box that allows you to select what kind of date value you want to use in the first place. So we're going to use year here. And now we have, instead of discrete, we have a continuous axis. And we're going to bring on population total, and we can see that over time. One thing you can do when the value is up so high in your axis is you can uncheck this box that says include zero, and it will not always include zero in your axis, but this can be misleading. So you can see that it looks like population growth is something really dramatic by increasing that slope of the line, whereas it really wasn't quite as dramatic as it seems. So as long as it's communicated well and you're not doing it to mislead your users, you just need to keep in mind that this include zero can change what your graph is saying. So we're going to not include the zero at this time, just so that we can focus in on our data a little bit. Now we're going to add our forecast. So we're going to click on forecast and drag it on. and it adds the forecast to our visualization right there. And now we can right click here and see forecast result is actual and forecast. So you can see that the forecast picks up here in 2012 and pushes out what it thinks it'll be in 2013 as well. You can change how far out that forecast goes by right-clicking on the line and clicking forecast option. And we can change, it says automatically the next 2 years, but we could change it so that it's the next 10 years. And it will go out into the future, out to 2022. You can change prediction intervals, or if you don't want to show them, you don't have to show them. And this is just kind of a visual guide for those prediction intervals. Okay, and then you can also have your trend line show, where it shows your trend line following out from where your population growth is, and also the trend line for your forecast right there. And we'll call this world population trend. Excellent. And we're going to make one more visualization for this, and it's going to be a pie chart. So the pie chart is also going to be based off of population. So we're going to click on population, and we're going to control click on country and come over to show me and click your pie chart. Great. So I'm going to make this the entire view so we can see the pie chart better. And this is getting really crazy in here. And so I have changed my mind, and instead of country, I'm going to drag region over top of country. And now we see something a little bit more manageable. So we can see that here's Asia, and it makes up the biggest piece of the pie, and then here is everybody else. So right now, each of these is population total, and we could keep it that way, or we could do what we did last time and change it to % of total, so that on hover we can see the population and the percentage of population that it contributes. So for this pie chart, we're just going to show Asia versus everybody else. So we need to make a group. And what we'll do is select all of these, and we're going to right click and click group. So now we have all of those things we selected, and we have other. Let's edit our group. Right click, edit group. We're going to rename this group Asia because that's all that's in there. And we're going to rename this group rest of the world. Okay, so now we have our group. We can drag it onto label, and we can see Asia and rest of the world. And now see how it's breaking it up into those different sections? That's because we still have region on our detail right here. So we pull region off. Now it's just split Asia, rest of the world. We can change our colors, make it a little bit more visually interesting. Now we can still see our percentages. And now, let's rename it, and then we'll put it all together on a dashboard. Great. So let's make our dashboard. We have this new dashboard button down here, and you can choose what sizes you want. So we have a fixed size, where you just select the width and height. We have automatic, which will just fill your screen. And we have a range, which has a minimum size and a maximum size. Some of the good things about fixed is that once you have it, you can have it always look that way, so no matter where they're looking at it, you know that it's going to be laid out the way that you expected. However, if somebody's looking at on a screen that is bigger or smaller than yours, then it doesn't fill up the screen, or it will fill up the screen too much and they'll have to scroll up and down and left and right. If you have automatic, then it will fit the screen that it's displayed on. However, the things that you've placed might get squished too close together. And then the range gives you a minimum size and a maximum size, meaning if the screen is too big, it still won't fill up the screen, but it can get closer, and then as they get smaller and smaller screens, you at least know that it will never make it get smaller than this particular size. So there's some benefits to that as well, where you still have a little bit of control of what it will look like at the end. Great, let's bring on our worksheets. And you can see that where you hover, it fills up that space, and that's where it's going to show up. You can also adjust the lines in between different visualizations for things that need more space or less space. Another important thing to recognize is that when you click on a visualization, like this one, up here it will tell you how it's viewing that visualization within that space. So if you click standard, then it will do a standard fit, versus if you have entire view, where it will make it fit inside the box. Over here we could have fit width or fit height. On some of the visualizations it doesn't make as much of a difference. However, when you have a visualization that maybe has a lot of text in it and they need to be able to scroll, you'll want to have it fit width, but you don't want it to fit height, because then it will shove all of that information into the box and not allow you to scroll up and down. So if you saw, as we dragged these on, it took these legends and added it to the left here. We can modify that and make them floating and drag them next to the visualizations that they are relevant to. And this particular one has a couple of things wrong with it. We might not want the title of this to be region group, so we could come in and we could edit the title and then maybe just call it region. However, I don't think we need this legend at all because it's very clearly marked on the visualization there. So you could also just remove it from the dashboard. And this one is telling you how big of a circle it would need to be before it gets to that population number. So it belongs to this circle as well, but again is unnecessary potentially because we have our two population numbers showing up right as we hover. So we'll remove that as well. So at this point we have a visualization, or 3 visualizations all on the same page, which is the basics of a dashboard. However, we might want to be able to interact with them a little bit more than just hovering. And so this is where we should look into adding filters. So we have information over time, we have information by country, and we have some information by region here. One of the quickest things you can do to add functionality to the dashboard is by clicking this Use as Filter button. So if we click this, that means whatever country we click on here will filter the other visualization. And then you can unselect it to go back. Now, that Use as Filter button actually creates an action here, filter 1 generated, that it's made on its own. Now you can see that when we click on China, it doesn't make a lot of sense to have this pie chart update based on that China click, because it's just going to show duplicated information. So it shows the 20% or the 20% here and the 17 billion. And then here it does the same thing, except for it shows 100% because it's filtered everything else out of the chart, so it now makes up 100% of the circle. So that doesn't make a lot of sense. So there are ways to format your visualization or your actions, modify your actions so that they only affect the things that make sense. So we can come here and click Edit. We're going to call this Country Action. And we want it to use the population by country sheet and then modify only the trend. So now when we click on China, we see China's trend over time. And it doesn't affect our pie because that doesn't make sense for it to affect our pie. We might want to select on our pie Asia or rest of the world and have that affect the other visualization. So we can click Use as Filter here, and click Asia. And now it zooms into Asia on our map and shows us just the Asia world population trend. And here's rest of the world, and we can see that Asia is grayed out. And there's the rest of the world, and here's the rest of the world population trend. We might also want to be able to use this to filter to a certain year. So if we click Use this filter, then we click on 2011, you can see these numbers are slightly updating. So this is 19%, and we come here, 19.5%, come down here, and we can see that the pie updates a little bit, although it hasn't been anything dramatic, but you can kind of see it over time. So that's one way to add filters to your visualization. Another way is to use actual filtering instead of just actions. So if we come back here to our trend, we could take the year, we're going to control click and drag it onto filters. And now we have a year filter, so we could have it the actual year number, so just look at 1 year at a time, or a range of dates. So if we click range of dates, that makes this slider from 2000 to 2012. So if we hit OK, we'll right click and we'll click show filter. We can see it here, and as we drag this, it updates, but kind of messes with our forecast. So let's not do a year filter in this case. So we click remove filter there. But maybe we want a filter just on this for the different years. So let's drag year onto the filters. We're just going to do the year number next. And here's all the years. We're going to let all of them be selected for now. And then we're going to show the filter. And here's all of our years. And we can change the way that our quick filter shows up. And we can make it like a drop down, so they can still select multiples, but it's a drop down. Or maybe we want this visualization to be just 1 year at a time. So we could choose single value in a list, and it lists out all the years, or in a drop down, and we want it to be 2012. And then we want this to show up on our dashboard. So we come to the dashboard, and we click more options here, hover over filters, and we can see the filters available, and we can click year of year. And now our formatting hasn't passed on. So that's one thing to remember, that formatting it just on the workbook doesn't necessarily mean that the formatting will pass over to the dashboard. So I tend to not do any formatting on the workbooks and just format it on the dashboards, because the dashboards are what I publish. So we're going to single value drop down. We're going to add it. We're going to move it to the top. So now how we do that, let's talk a little bit about what each of these sections are. Come here to layout, and you can see we have this layout here, item hierarchy. So tiled is the whole screen, and inside of that we have a horizontal container. And inside this horizontal container, we have another horizontal container. And when you click on something in this view, it shows you where it exists. So we can see this horizontal container is outlined now, and then we change it to vertical, and it outlines this. Now, a horizontal container allows things to be side by side, and a vertical container allows things to be one on top of the other. And so in our vertical container, we see all this extra space for extra things to be on top of each other. But if we wanted to have it at the top, we would maybe want things to be able to be side by side. So if we go back to the dashboard and we grab horizontal and drag it to the top, it adds a horizontal container up here. And now you can see everything that's floating kind of stays in the place that it was, even though all the other things shifted. So that's one of the disadvantages of floating, is that you're kind of just manually choosing where it will stand using your X and Y position, and it's not dynamic. So let's give us a little bit less space up here. We can add a text box into our horizontal container, or we'll say population dashboard. We can format it. Now we have our title up here, And then we can add our filter. We're going to drag it to be on inside of our horizontal container, but on the side here. We can give it more or less space. Let's bring our legends down to places where they make sense again. Perfect. And so now we have this that will affect this only and show you just 2012, 2011, 2010. So we don't want it to affect the trend because we want the trend to show all of time. And just looking at 1 year for this trend that is only at a yearly part and forecasts into the future doesn't make any sense. But we maybe want it to also affect this worksheet so that these two are in sync. And so that the dashboard is basically for 2012 except for the trend, which shows you the past and the future. So one way that you can do that is clicking Apply to Worksheets here. And you can choose Selected Worksheets. And it will show you all the worksheets in this visualization, or in this dashboard. And you can click Show All Worksheets in Workbook, and then if there were other worksheets, it would show them. So we wanted to do Asia versus rest of the world and population contribution by country. Okay? And that's another way we can change what year they show. So it's only going to show 1 year at a time, unless we select all. And then this visualization isn't affected by it. If we don't want to click on a country and have it make the change, if we instead want to have a filter for country, we can do that by taking country and dragging it onto filters. We'll have it show all for now. And then when we go back to our dashboard and we come to this visualization, we can go filters and add country. And it's just added it side by side where we had our other filters, so that's a nice feature of Tableau where it can kind of guess where you might want things. We're going to do multiple value drop down, and right now it only affects that visualization, and we can just look at one country at a time. And we might not want it to affect this visualization because it doesn't do us any good to just look at one region in a pie chart. But maybe we want it to affect the world population trend, so we can do the same thing we did before. And we want it to affect these two. We'll click OK. And so now we could look at all of these countries, and that would update both these visualizations. Another thing I like to do on a filter is customize and click Show Apply button. And this means we can make all these changes in here. See, I've selected none, however, these visualizations aren't updating. And then I wanted to look at Turkey, so I found Turkey, and then I hit Apply, and that's when they update. Perfect. So now we have a dashboard complete with filters and actions. We also have a title on our dashboard. We can give it a little bit less space, and some legends. We have titles on each of these pieces. However, if we didn't want a title here, we can click Hide Title, and it will just show our visualization there. And this is dashboard number 1. Here's what it looks like in full screen mode. Full screen mode is a good opportunity for you to test it to see what it will look like to the end user. I press escape and get back out, and it doesn't give you these highlights when you hover over things that are dashboard formatting related. You can see that all those extra lines went away, and it just gives you the opportunity to test out your dashboard in a more real way and see how they will use it instead of giving you the dashboard editing options.
Next, we're going to make a dashboard revolving around health information. So first we're going to make a map about birth rates. So we're going to call it birth rate rank map. And to make a map, we're going to double click on country, and we're going to change it to a map type. So we have a filled map here. And then we're going to bring birth rate onto color. So let's define our colors a little bit by clicking on this color part of the marks card. We'll click Edit Colors, and we're going to change it to red and gold. And the idea here is that the red is for a higher birth rate, which is more associated with countries that have poor health. So we'll hit Apply, and now we have our higher birth rate countries highlighted in red. Next, we're going to create a class. So we're going to duplicate birth rate, and let's edit that field. We're going to call it birth rate class. And so we're going to say that anything that is in the top 50 countries with the highest birth rate is categorized as having an alarming birth rate. So we will first do the average birth rate, and then we're going to do a rank on that. Did you see sometimes when you're auto-completing your statements, it will replace one of these functions that you have with the one that you pressed tab for. So if I type if, or I start to type if, and then I come here and click on if, it replaced my rank with if. So keep an eye out for that. If you're like, where did my thing go? It's because I was typing it right next to it. So if I put a space and then I start to type if and I click if, it will not delete rank. So we're going to say if the rank of average is less than or equal to 50. So if it's in the top 50, then alarming birth rate. Else if, and we can take this again, is greater than 50, then normal birth rate. And always make sure you put on the end. Also, we didn't necessarily have to have this else if statement. So if we had just done else normal birth rate, that would have covered all of our bases. So with these if statements, just make sure that you're always getting all of the different options that you want. But in this case, we defined both. However, we didn't have to define the second calculation, because if it is not in the top 50, then it's obviously in the bottom, the rest. So we're going to hit OK. And then we're going to put birth rate class onto label. And it's gone around and labeled everything. And I am seeing alarming birth rate on everything. So let's see what the problem is. So if we open this back up by right-clicking and clicking Edit, you can see it says results are computed along table across. So we're going to click Default Table Calculation here. And instead of compute using automatic, we're going to change it to compute using country. We'll hit OK and hit Apply. And that didn't seem to fix it. So this is the first place I would look if it's not doing what you would expect. So we'll put it back to automatic. Okay. The second place I would look is inside of the table calculation that is created. So when we defined rank here, we put a table calculation on it. So when we right click here, we get edit table calculation. And we're going to choose that we want to do the rate based on the specific dimension of country. So now we can see, using the logic, the calculation assistance, that we no longer have just alarming birth rate. We have normal birth rate and alarming birth rate on our screen. So we can close this. And we are done here. One thing you can do is, when we have allow labels to overlap other marks selected, then it will make sure that every label shows up, but it gets super crazy in there. So there are some times where the labels may overlap a little bit, and so you'll want to select this option. In our case, we don't want that. And now we have a visualization showing birth rate map based on rank. Our next visualization is going to be about average life expectancy. male versus female. So we're going to do a chart across time. So we're going to click year and bring it onto columns, and we're going to change it to this year in the continuous section. So now we have an axis, and we're going to double click on female life expectancy. Oh, there we go. Double click on female life expectancy and then double click on male life expectancy. So what that did was made us two charts, one on top of the other, but we don't want that. So we'll take this off, and we're going to drag male life expectancy right onto this axis for the female life expectancy. And what this has done is made what's called a blended axis chart. So it's not a dual axis chart where we have another axis over here for the second visualization. This one is a blended axis chart. So they necessarily use the same axis and they necessarily have the same kinds of marks. So we'll take a look and see what the difference is there. So if I were to change this to a bar chart, we would have bar chart for both of them, and I can't define one separately from the other. Change it back to a line chart, and they're both a line chart. Now if we go back to when we just had female life expectancy and we drag male on next to it and we have two charts, now we can change it to a dual axis and we have one on top of the other. However, our axes don't line up. We can see at the top here is 15K and over here it's 14K. So we're going to synchronize the axis, and you can see one on top of the other. And we have two marks cards, so we could have this one be a bar chart and that one be a line chart. So that's some of the differences of those two. We're going to do a blended axis chart. So I'm going to take male and drag it here, and we have our blended axis chart. And now you can see that our scale here is really strange. So what it's doing is it's adding up all of the life expectancies for all the different countries instead of averaging it. So we're going to change that by right-clicking on the measure down in this measure values card, hovering over measure sum, and we're going to change it to average. Since I only changed one of them and they share the same axes, it's really spread out now and it almost looks like a straight line down there. And then let's change the other, and it should get everything a little bit more in sync. There we go. So now we can see the average life expectancy over time, which for both of them seems to be going up. However, it seems to be higher for females. Now let's take a look at our analytics, and let's drag on forecast. So it's forecasted out the next 2 years for both lines. And we'll bring on trend onto linear. And let's change it to a square. So now we see each individual point for the life expectancy for females and males, and we can see what they're expected to be in the future and our trends. And our next visualization is going to be a heat map about multiple different measures, so we'll just call it a heat map for now. And for our heat map, we're going to look at the different countries. So we'll bring country onto rows, and we're going to look at their birth rate. So I just double clicked on birth rate and brought it on. We're going to look at their health expenditure percentage on GDP, so how much they spend on GDP. So when I double clicked on it, it did what we did before, where we have a measures value card, and so now whenever we put measures on here, that determines what goes here, because we have our measure names on columns. So every measure in here, their name is going to define the name of the column, and the values define what's in the text right here. Great. We're also going to bring on infant mortality rate and the life expectancy for females. Okay. So now it has changed these to not have decimal points after them, which is not as helpful. So we're going to format those, and you can format it field by field. So for birth rate, we definitely want to have decimals afterwards. As a matter of fact, the birth rate is a percentage. So instead of doing a number standard, we'll just go to percentage. And now we don't need to have those decimals afterwards. We can just look at the birth rate as a rate. And for percent of GDP for health expenditures, we can come click there and do the same thing. And for infant mortality rate, okay. And to make this make a little bit more sense, we again need to change it from a sum to an average. And for some of these, we could change it from a sum to an average right inside of the, for all of these, we could change it from a sum to an average in the default properties under aggregation, so that it will automatically average it whenever we bring it out. Default is sum, but if we make it automatically average, then we won't have to do that again for any other visualizations. I won't do that at this time because I get a little bit confused sometimes when I don't have my sum on there by default, because that's what I'm so used to seeing by default. Great, so we now have a matrix by country and by our different metrics here, and so we can take our measure values and drag it onto color, and we'll make our marks from automatic to square, and it will make our heat map. Now, what happens with a heat map is it colors darkly the higher the number it is in this case, and right now it's doing it for the whole area, so 1% is obviously much smaller than 82. But if we wanted to be able to look at birth rate independently from life expectancy, we can right click on the measure values on the color and click use separate legends. And so now we have a legend for each one of these. Let's change the colors on those legends so that we can see them separately a little bit more clearly. So we'll change the colors by coming over here to each of the legends, and we'll leave one the same, but we'll change this one. If we click edit colors, you can see our different palettes. You can see some of them just have one color, others have one color to another color. We used the red gold before, so now you can see that one is changed. We could use another one that goes from green to blue. Great. You can also define your own. So you can make a custom one that could go from light to dark, and then you can choose what color you want as your dark color. So we could pick a lighter blue, and then we see that last one. And now with these separate color palettes, you can quickly see the difference with birth rate and spending on health. And that is our heat map with separate legends. So let's build this all into a dashboard now. We're going to call it our health dashboard. And for simplicity, we're going to make it automatic so it fills our screen. And then we're going to first bring on our map. We're going to bring on our health related map with birth rates. Then we're going to bring on our heat map. And we'll bring on our life expectancy lines. Now, as we brought on all of our charts, it brought in our legends here. And we're going to move our legends up to the top. So let's add a horizontal container. And then let's put our legends into the horizontal container. And let's put these ones in order. So life expectancy. Oh, so birth rate is going to be over here. Great. Now, one thing we can do is make these smaller. Well, that's actually just making that one bigger, huh? Okay, so you would make them smaller by making something else bigger or by adding in a blank space, which would then help you adjust the size by taking up the space that you're not using. Another thing to pay attention to is this fixed width. So once you start to drag the size on something, it no longer is dynamic. So if we unfix that width so that it's only taking up whatever space is left. Oh, and that one is not fixed width. And then we can edit the width on this to be even bigger. Then it will squish things over to where we would like them to be. So that's one of the ways you can add space or make things the size you would like them to be. Now let's take a look at filters. Oh, before we take a look at filters, I want to look at this map one more time because I think that it would be useful for our colors to be a little bit more distinct. So one quick way to navigate to your worksheet from your dashboard is to click this Go to Sheet button. And while we're here, I'm going to click on Color, Edit Colors, and we did red and gold, and we're going to change it from this sequence to a stepped color, and we're going to change it to 3 colors. So it's going to either be this color, this color, this color, and when I hit OK, you can kind of see it's a little bit more dramatic in our differences, and it's put everything into the 3 categories we defined. So let's go back to our dashboard, and we can see the difference there. And now we're going to take a look at our filters. So we want to be able to filter by country. So let's bring country onto filters, and we're going to allow it to use all. And we're going to, here you can click Apply to Worksheets. And you can click Selected Worksheets, and it's going to pop up with all the worksheets in the whole workbook. And so one disadvantage of doing it on the worksheet is that you can see all of the worksheets in the workbook, and you have to differentiate between which ones are on the dashboard and which ones aren't. And these are the 3 on this dashboard, so we're going to hit OK. And we're also going to do it by year. So when we drag the year onto filters, we're going to allow them to choose years. So we're going to do the distinct number of years. We'll click Use All. Okay. And we're going to apply to the worksheets this one with the birth rate and the average life expectancy male versus female. We're not going to filter down our line chart by year because we want to be able to see it over time, and if we filter down the time, then we don't get as much context. So we'll hit OK. Let's go back to our dashboard. If I click on more options here and hover over filters, you can see that year filter and that country filter. You should also be able to see both of those filters on the heat map because I told it to apply to that one as well. So here's the country. Oh, I made a mistake. Let's go back to this visualization and apply to worksheets, selected worksheets. See, I wanted it to be on the birth rate and the heat map, not the line chart, and I clicked the wrong one. So that was a good test. So when we go here to the heat map and click down, you can see now we get the year of year as well. So we'll click year of year, and let's put it over here, and we're going to make it a multiple values drop down, and we'll bring it over to the middle. And let's also get the countries filter. Great, so now that we have these in here, we don't need this to be so big, so let's edit the width and make it 300, even smaller, 200. Great, and let's change our country to be a single value drop down, so you can pick one at a time. And let's also change it, or this year of year, since we can select multiples, let's change it so that on customize that you show the apply button. So here, since they can only select one, we don't have the apply button because it will just automatically apply. And here, since they can select multiples, we'll let them unselect all and pick their years and then hit apply. And then you'll see the changes. And you can see that even though I've selected only 2011 and 2012, you still see all of the years on this line chart as expected. And there is our health dashboard.
Our next dashboard is going to have to do with economy. Our first sheet is going to be another map that is going to have to do with overall GDP. And as we usually begin with maps by double-clicking on country and changing it to a map mark type. And this time we're going to bring on GDP onto color and change it to average. And we can edit the colors. Let's this time do a custom diverging, so you get to pick both colors. And let's pick a little bit lighter. Okay, red for there, and then we want to do maybe like a deeper green. And that way, you can see who has the highest GDP, which is green. We hit apply, okay, and then it will eventually get lighter and lighter until it goes to gray, which then it will lead to green. Okay. And next we're going to make scatter plot, which we will call GDP versus GDP per capita. So GDP, or gross domestic product, versus gross domestic product per capita or per person. And to make a scatter plot, you have one measure on one axis, and then another measure, which is going to be GDP per capita, which we will now create on the other axis. So let's start with GDP, and we'll hit duplicate. And let's edit that. And we're going to call it GDP per capita. And we're going to take sum of GDP and divide it by the sum of the total population. So population total. What is my error? Opening parenthesis. There we go. And then we have GDP per capita. So what this will do is sum up the GDP across whatever measures we have in place, across whatever dimensions we have in place, and then sum up the population for those same dimensions, and then divide it, instead of dividing it per row and then doing an aggregation on it. Okay? So now we're going to bring on GDP per capita on the rows. And we have the sum of GDP and the GDP per capita. And to make it more than just one little mark on our scatter plot, we will drag on country to detail. And now we have one mark per country. And you can see some countries have a high GDP per capita, and some countries have a high GDP overall, but not as high of a GDP per capita. And so on. We have some middle of the road people here. So we can change this from automatic to circles, and now they're dots like you might see on a scatter plot. And you can drag region onto color, and now we can see our different regions. And we see a lot of reds here, and it's quick to see what region things belong in. Also, you can click to highlight, and you can see all of the Americas highlighted in context. The next visualization we're going to make is going to be showing how much countries spend on healthcare as a part of their GDP. So we're going to rename it to be GDP on healthcare. And we're going to look at each of our countries. And we're going to make a bar chart that shows the health expense GDP. And we're going to change this to average. And we're also going to show the health expense per capita. Over here it shows how much is spent per person on health. And this is showing how much is spent on health based on GDP. Click at the top and click sort, and it's sorting by this first one. And you can see which countries spend the most of their GDP on health. We can again bring region onto color so we can see the different regions highlighted. And let's bring on labels. So for our different marks cards, we're going to want to control click this and drag it onto the labels. And we can see that it's a percentage, but it's coming up as a number, so we can right click and click format right there. And we're going to change the number to percentage. Maybe just do 1 decimal place. And then for this one, we're going to control and drag that onto labels. And maybe we'll change this one to currency. However, if you don't want to change it to currency, since we aren't sure necessarily what currency this data set is in, it's worth checking out what currency it is in. So for now, we'll just have it as a number. And now we're going to customize our tooltip. So we're going to go to the overall marks card, and we'll click on tooltip, and we want it to tell us the country in the top. So we'll erase region, and we're going to erase country label and center country. And then we're going to put this country spends this percentage on healthcare. And if you want to preview it, you can hover or click here on preview, and it will show you an example. Marshall Islands spends 2.1% on healthcare. We'll hit enter, and then when we hover, it tells you the country, and it has our custom tooltip on both visualizations, or on both of the different axes. So let's build our dashboard. We'll bring on our map. We'll bring on our healthcare visualization and our GDP versus GDP per capita. And we'll move our legends to the top again by adding a horizontal container to the top and bringing them up here. One thing we can do also is to give this more space. We can have it go all the way to the top, and these legends are just side by side, just above the map and the GDP per capita scatter type plot. An interesting thing you can do in Tableau is you can see this outlier of the United States is making it difficult to see the rest of the information or to visualize if there's any trend there. So you could right click on it and click exclude, and then it will exclude it from your data set very quickly. And then you'll just click this back button to get it back. Great, now let's take a look at filters. we are going to do a single filter. So let's go to this visualization and we'll bring on country. We'll click use all. Okay. And we're going to apply it to worksheets. So I showed you how we can apply it to worksheets here. You can also apply it to worksheets once it's on the dashboard. So if we come here and look at filters, we can see that country is on the filters for this visualization. But if we come down here and look at filters, we still see country because it's in the details of the information. So either way, when we add country, since I added it from this visualization, it only affects this visualization. Okay, but we want it to affect all on the worksheet. So we're going to apply to worksheets, and we can click selected worksheets, and we can click all on dashboard. Okay, let's bring this over here. We're going to allow them to see all at once and be able to scroll and select the ones they want. And now, when we select different ones, it affects all 3 worksheets. We're also going to add an action for a URL action. Add action, go to URL, and when we click on a country on the overall GDP map, we want it to take us to the Wikipedia page that talks about the economy for that country. So that is this URL, and it's going to say Wikipedia for economy of, and we're going to add our country to the end. So we hit OK. We have it running on menu, so let's change it to run on select. And as soon as you click it, it will take you there. Okay, so now let's try it. And we can click on Canada, and it will take us to the Wikipedia page for the economy of Canada. Great. We click on Brazil, same thing. So if we unselect on Brazil, then it will make our map highlighted normally again. We can also use this one to filter the other visualizations. And so we could click use this filter here, and then when we click on France, it will filter these 2 other visualizations to France. You can see that when we filter this visualization to a particular country, so if we look at Germany, Germany wasn't green before on our map, but now it is. That happens because our scale has changed just for the ones selected. So if we control click France and Germany and Switzerland and Austria, we now have a scale that reflects only these countries, and the biggest is going to be the darkest green, or the highest GDP is the darkest green, and the lowest is the lightest pink. And there is our economy dashboard. You can see that we have some nulls on these visualizations. That occurs when we don't have all of the data for every point. You can ignore those and they won't show up on the final visualization when you publish it to server. Or you can deal with those by clicking on them and filtering that data out, or showing that data at the default position, which is showing the null values at 0. Our final dashboard is going to be about the ease of doing business in a country. So our first visualization is going to be a bar chart, which we will call days to start business. So how many days it takes to start a business is important to know when you're trying to start a business in a country, and also can be an indicator of how easy it will be to do business in that country. So let's make a bar chart that includes every country. And then we're going to bring on days to start a business. And we will sort it smallest to biggest. And we have some days or some countries that don't have any days. So let's filter out those countries. And we're going to filter it to only those that have a good market. We're going to make a calculated field. We're going to define business-friendly market. Well, we're going to define our market based on how easy it is to start a business and how many days it takes. So if it takes less than 25 days to start a business, we'll consider that a good market. And so we're going to do if the days to start a business is less than or equal to 25, then else if days to start a business is greater than 25, then business might or might not work. Doing less than or equal to 25 or greater than 25 allows us to be able to define these two different markets. So we'll hit apply there. And we're going to filter it just to a good market. And we're going to look at just 1 year. We'll look at 2012, our most recent year. And we're going to color it based on region. And we can see which regions tend to have the shorter days to start a business. And we're going to move on and build our next visualization, which is also a bar chart, which we will call ease of business. So we have this ease of business field, and we can bring on the country and we can bring on ease of business. And we want to make it a measure. So ease of business is at this point looking at it like it's a string, and we can change that in our default properties and convert it to a measure, or use it up here and change it to a measure. When we try to change it to a measure here, it wants to treat it like a string, so it wants to take the minimum or the maximum. But if we here convert it to a measure, then it also automatically made it a count. So the first thing to do would be to change the data type to a number. And now we can change it to a measure and aggregate it. So we could do like the sum of ease of business. In our use case, we're actually going to do the average of ease of business. And then we want to have the smallest on the top. We do have some that don't have ease of business ratings, so we're going to filter that data out. And again, we want the year to be 2012, but how we're going to do that is by coming to this visualization and by applying this particular year of 2012. So we'll do it on select workbooks and select ease of business. Okay. And now this one also has the year of 2012 there. And we're going to segment this by creating another header. We're going to call that business friendly. And we're going to say that if the ease of business is, so I guess this is a nice thing to know. So if we start typing in what we want to see, then we can select it from a list here. But you can also interact outside of this box, so you could just grab ease of business and drag it into the dialog box here, and that's really nice. So we're going to say if it is greater than or equal to 1 and less than or equal to 3, then we're going to say it has the most business friendly regulations. Give us a little more room to look at. Okay, and this statement won't work because it's saying and what is less than or equal to 3. So you have to have ease of business in both places. And then this should say then, and not the. Great. So now we're just getting an error because we don't have an end. So if that's all we wanted to do, then that's what we would do, but then we'll just do another else if. And it's already taken, this if statement goes through one condition at a time. So it's already classified everything that's between these two numbers. And so now we can just say if ease of business is less than or equal to 10, then we'll call it very business friendly regulations. And we'll keep going. Else if ease of business is less than or equal to 50, then we're going to call it moderate. And we're just going to say moderate business regulations. Copy that for later use. Less than or equal to 150, then strict. So the reason that this doesn't grab everything that is less than or equal to 150 is because these sections 1 to 3, and then 4 to 10, and then 11 to 50 have all been classified up to this point. So it's just getting everything else. And we're going to finally say else, everything else is going to be called not preferred for business. And see if we get any errors. Calculation is valid. Let's see if this works as we expect. So we'll hit apply, and we'll bring business friendly onto our rows. And now it categorizes everything based on what we said. So we want to define what order these go in. So we're going to click sort, and we want the most business friendly at the top. Then we want moderate, then strict, then not preferred. Okay. So we have our top 3 that are the most business friendly, and then we've got 4 through 10, which are very, then we've got our moderate, our strict, and our not preferred. So let's bring region again onto color, and we can see which regions are the most business friendly. And we have our year of 2012 there. And now we're going to make this even more useful by adding the business tax rate onto the label so that you can see that business friendly is like Singapore, but they have a pretty high tax rate of 27, whereas if you get down to some of these that are not preferred, some of them have really low tax rates. So let's make sure that we're getting the right tax rate. So you can see that 27 is definitely not the highest tax rate that we have for business. But you can also see that there are places that have even lower tax rates, like Saudi Arabia, and we have 8% here. It looks like we don't ever go to that second decimal place. So let's quickly format this. Oh. Business tax rate is also text. So if we could convert our data type to decimal, and then we will format it to be a percentage, and we just need the 1 decimal place. Okay, now let's make some annotations. So we could come and click here on this mark, and then we can annotate that mark which will make this dialog box, and it's already filled in here. And so we could use some of this information. So I'm going to copy that. And I'll put some hard returns there. So we're going to say that this country is the most business friendly, but has a business tax rate of, and let's grab the tax rate. And then we'll erase this. And we'll hit OK. And I've made a typo. So Singapore is the most business friend is not what I meant to say. So I can click edit, business friendly, but has a tax rate of, and you can move this around, draws the line to Singapore, which is the mark that we wanted to annotate. So that is an annotation on a mark. If we wanted to just make an annotation for the area, then we could point out that more business-friendly countries often have high business taxes. We could change that size, make everything fit. Now we have this second note where our user can come in and see some more information about what's being presented here. Great. And now we're going to make one more visualization, and it's going to be about phone and internet usage, because you may want to know about the phone and internet trends when you're looking to start a business. So we're going to do this one over time. So it does not need to have that year filter on it. And we're doing our axis. And we're going to look at mobile phone usage. So I double clicked it, it shows mobile phone usage over time. And we're going to change it to average so that it's averaging it across the countries. And then we're going to bring on internet usage. So we'll bring it on side by side so we have two visualizations. And we're going to also make that average. Now, we might not want these to share an axis because they are measured a little bit differently. And so we can make it a dual axis, but allow them to keep their independent axes. Or you can synchronize the axes and see them at their rates. However, the usage is just a little bit of a different measurement. We can have one of them be a bar chart and the other one be a line. Let's have this one be the bar chart. Okay, and then the line is in the front. You can also change which one's in the front by coming and clicking on the axis itself. And you can click move marks to front, and that moves that one to the front. Okay, and now it's made each of these wide, and there's like a start point and an end point on the axis for the bar, and that comes here under size, where they're all fixed, or you could have it be manual, where we can define the size of the bars. So we're going to make those bars like this, and we can see them going up over time. We can also change the width of the line itself, make it thicker or thinner. And we can change the colors here. So let's change it to orange, since red might imply that it's bad in some cultures. And now we can see our internet usage and our phone usage over time and how it's trending. And so this will all come together on our new dashboard, which is about ease of business. You can see that I have a sheet called Ease of Business and a dashboard that I've called Ease of Business, but it won't let you create a dashboard with the same name as your worksheet. So, Ease of Business dashboard. Let's have it fit the screen. And we're going to bring on our days to start business visual, our ease of business visual, and our phone and internet visual. Let's put our legends at the top again. So we'll make our horizontal container, and we'll bring our region legend into there, and then our measure names for internet versus mobile phone. And we have a filter that already is pre-applied to 2 of the visualizations called year of year. And it's selected 2012, and if we select 2011, it's only changing this one, it's filtering out all the information for this visualization and changing this one to 2011. So let's see why that's happening. If we go to this visualization and click the Go to Sheet, we can see year of 2012 is here. Let's click Show Filter. And if we change the filter to 2011, okay, it's not showing up here, and the only filter I can see that could be removing it is this average ease of business. That is removing anything that is null. So if I pull that off, you can see that we don't seem to have any information for 2011 for ease of business. And the more years I select, I'm not seeing any ease of business information. So we're going to want to set this to 2012 only, because that seems to be the only information that is useful for this visualization. So let's go back until we're back to the state we were in when we started. Okay, so here we are. Now we're going to want to remove this filter, and we're going to give it its own filter that only selects 2012. That is not connected to the other filter. So now, when we change year of year, it only changes this visualization. Sometimes that's useful to note, sometimes it's useful to put, let's do a single value drop down. Sometimes it's useful to put this right next to the visualization it affects. So if we could change it to floating and just put it like here, that makes it clear that it's just changing this chart so that people don't get confused. Another thing that we can do, that we should do on all of our visualizations, is change the titles so that they're more business or user friendly. Great. And so we have our filter, and let's use this as a filter, and that way we can click on New Zealand, and we can see its most business-friendly regulations, and we can see its internet and phone usage over time. We can click on a lot of different countries to see those changes. You can see that some countries have a steeper change, so some of them have adopted phone and internet usage and have stayed pretty similar, whereas other ones have only really adopted it in the last couple of years. Also, if we wanted to filter to just one country, we could do what we did before and create a country filter. Here's another way to go to the sheet. You can click this down arrow and click Go to Sheet, or you can come over here. You can see that it's highlighting a visualization over here, or a sheet, and whatever sheet I click on is highlighted over here. And there's this little pop-out arrow here that also takes you to the sheet. Now we can bring country on, use them all, go back to our dashboard. We'll go to filters and select country. We'll make it a multiple value drop-down. We're going to add the apply button, and now we're going to make it apply to all the visualizations by clicking apply to workbooks, selected worksheets, all on dashboard, okay. Now we can see that if we just want to look at Afghanistan, okay, we can see how many days it takes to start a business there. It's not preferred for business, and it's internet and phone usage over time. And those are our 4 dashboards. So as a review, we have made a dashboard on population, we made one about health, we made one that had to do with our economy, and one that had to do with our ease of doing business. Thank you for joining us today. Please comment below if you have any questions, or please visit www.simplilearn.com for more information. Thank you and have a great day.
Hi there, if you like this video, subscribe to the Simplilearn YouTube channel and click here to watch similar videos. To nerd up and get certified, click here.